The underground garage sat in a pale, uneasy glow. Old fluorescent lights quivered overhead, flaring green, then dying out and leaving strips of shadow. Oil stained the concrete floor. Water dripped from rusted pipes, uneven and hollow, like a weak pulse. The air reeked of fuel, cold and heavy. No one stayed here long. You parked. You left. In the corner where streetlight bled through the glass wall, a figure sat alone. Amara Johnson, 26, in a faded blue janitor's uniform. The fabric was thin at the shoulders, worn by years of work. She sat cross-legged on the concrete, head bent, her rough hands turning the pages of an old book. Her eyes stayed fixed, steady, drinking in the words under the weak spill of light. To her, it was enough, more than enough. Beside her lay a few sheets covered in tight handwriting, a cracked pen, and a worn cloth bag left open at her side. In that space built for trash and machines, Amara studied with steady focus, as if the world had gone quiet to give her one more chance. Footsteps echoed at the far end of the garage. Heavy, certain. Out of the broken light came Richard Stanton, 53, a billionaire whose name carried weight in every boardroom. Tall, broad-shouldered, hair silvered and slicked back. His suit fit sharp, his shoes black and shining. Richard was known for precision, for blunt words, for cruelty when it served him. Wherever he stood, the room bent toward him. He stopped when he saw her. His gray-blue eyes moved over the papers, the cracked pen, the thin figure on the concrete floor. A smile touched his lips, clean, sharp, like a blade. "Look at her," he said, his voice flat with contempt. "A rat in the sewer, and this." His eyes flicked to the papers, the bag, the floor around her, her nest. The sound hit the concrete walls and came back in waves, each echo driving the humiliation deeper. Amara flinched, her body shaking for a moment. She snapped the notebook shut, shielding the words from his eyes. Her rough hands swept up the books and papers, stuffing them into the worn bag. Then she looked up. Richard's gaze met hers, cold, hard, unbending. "Sir?" Her voice was soft, careful, trembling. "I was just studying. The light here is better." The word study hit Richard like a spark on dry fuel. His brow tightened, his mouth curled into a sneer. "Wait a second. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us." He stepped closer, his voice rising, mocking, edged with rage. "Study?" His laugh was bitter, hollow. "You think knowledge will change your fate? Someone like you has only one place in this world, on your knees." The words cracked like a whip, echoing through the garage. Amara stayed silent. Her dark eyes rose to his, calm and unreadable, like still water hiding its depths. She did not speak. She did not bow. She only looked at him, steady, unbroken. In that moment, the filthy garage became a stage for the divide. On one side stood the man of power, cold and contemptuous. On the other, the janitor girl, poor, dismissed, yet holding his gaze, calm and unyielding, refusing to be put out. Tension filled the shadows, stretched tight beneath the flicker of the lights. Richard stood tall, hands in his pockets, his gaze unyielding. Amara held her worn books to her chest, her dark eyes steady on his. No words followed, yet the air grew heavy, thick as lead. In that basement, the moment carved itself deep, a glimpse of a world where power pressed down on the powerless, and the powerless still clung to a fragile flame to endure. Amara Johnson grew up in a ground-floor apartment in the city's southern quarter, where poverty clung to every wall. Sunlight touched her window for only a few hours before the stacked buildings smothered it. The place had 2 small rooms, a ceiling that pressed low, and walls stained with water like open sores. The only light came from a tired oil lamp that sputtered between glow and shadow. Clarissa Johnson, Amara's mother, had once been a nurse in a small hospital. Gentle and patient, she raised her daughter alone after her husband left. Then illness stole her strength, a failing heart wearing her down piece by piece. In her last years she lived on medicine, breath ragged, hands trembling as she stitched clothes for neighbors to earn a few coins. At night, Amara sat by her bed, one hand on her notebook, the other clinging to her mother's thin fingers, as if letting go would mean losing her for good. That winter day, the north wind slipped through the cracked door as Clarissa's breath gave out. Amara clung to her mother's body, screaming into the dark as it grew cold in her arms. Outside, the traffic roared on. No one heard. No one came. From that moment, her world broke apart. She was alone, poor, adrift in a city crowded yet mercilessly cold. She survived however she could. Washing dishes, babysitting, handing out flyers, nothing lasted. At last she found work as a janitor in the gleaming Stanton Tower. Each night, in her faded blue uniform and rubber gloves, she mopped the halls, emptied bins, scrubbed bathrooms, polished glass walls. To others she was invisible. To her, it was the single thread keeping her from the abyss. But in Amara's dark eyes, a quiet flame endured. She never let go of study. Each day she carried borrowed books on economics, their pages yellowed, and stacks of worn paper. Her apartment was too dim to read, and her mother was gone, so she found refuge in the tower's garage. There, under flickering bulbs and faint streetlight, she read. After each shift, amid the stench of fuel and dripping pipes, she sat on the concrete floor, copying lines with a steady hand. Patient as a farmer in winter, she tended the hope that one day knowledge would rise like shoots through frozen ground. To her coworkers, it was a joke. "Amara, what's the point? You'll be scrubbing floors forever," a man sneered, water splashing across the tiles. "You think a little math makes you a director?" a woman laughed, her eyes full of scorn. Amara stayed silent. She had long grown used to contempt. To them, poverty meant chains, and knowledge was useless weight. To her, it was the only rope keeping her from sinking. In stark contrast stood Richard Stanton, at 53, the very face of the city's wealth. At glittering soirees he appeared in tailored tuxedos, a glass of aged wine in hand. Around him pressed officials, politicians, investors, each handshake treated like a passport into power. Richard often found sport in mocking the poor. At one party, as the talk began to dull, he leaned in with a laugh edged in scorn. "You won't believe this," he said. "In my tower there's a black janitor girl who hides in the garage studying math. Can you picture it? A rat gnawing at books in a nest of trash?" The table burst into laughter. Jazz hummed in the background, chandeliers scattering light over glasses of red wine. Richard leaned back, eyes bright with triumph. To him, Amara was only a joke, a story to prove the foolishness of those beneath him. And so, while Richard signed billion-dollar deals and raised new towers of glass and steel, far below his world, Amara sat in the cold garage, carving out each fragile line of knowledge she could call her own. The garage incident, once Richard's party joke, spread quickly through the company. In the cafeteria, in the locker room, her name carried on whispers and sneers. "There goes the math rat off to her nest again. Careful, she'll be CEO one day. We'll all be calling her boss." The laughter followed her everywhere. Eyes tracked her every move. Some tipped dirty water onto the floors she'd just cleaned, smirking, "A little harder math for you to solve." Amara gritted her teeth and endured. She needed this job. Losing it meant losing her rent, her only foothold in the city. And deeper still, she carried a secret, one she guarded fiercely, one no one else could ever know. Every night was the same. After the endless corridors, she slipped to the garage, opened her books, and wrote. Sweat stained the pages. Her hands trembled, but she kept going. Two worlds ran side by side. Richard Stanton sat in a gold-trimmed conference room, glass raised, every official hanging on his word. Amara Johnson sat cross-legged on the concrete beside a battered mop bucket, under faint streetlight, writing line after line. After Richard made her a joke, the scorn only grew. Everyone saw her as a dreamer, a janitor who should know her place, someone for whom knowledge was useless. Still, Amara didn't quit. She scrubbed every streak of dirt, endured every sneer. To them, it was just the desperation of poverty, clinging to a meager wage. She was, in their eyes, forever the poor, foolish dreamer, too weak to change her fate. For them, escape from that cycle was impossible. But no one knew the full truth. Amara wasn't just an orphaned, stubborn janitor clinging to her job like a torn lifeline. She wasn't an innocent victim for fate to crush. She was silent, waiting for her moment. Few knew that 4 years ago she had been a top student of economics at a prestigious university. She graduated first in her class, her thesis praised for sharp analysis of financial risks in real estate projects. Her bright smile on graduation day still graced the school yearbook. Back then, she had believed knowledge and effort would open doors to a brilliant future. She had once worked in the business department of Stanton Holdings, the empire Richard Stanton ruled. In her first year, Amara proved herself with detailed reports and sharp analyses, but her excellence made her a target. In the predominantly white elite environment, whispered remarks followed her. She only got in because they need diversity. What's someone like her doing here? Sooner or later, she'll slip up. Amara had grown used to the barbs, yet she worked on, determined, until one day, reviewing contracts, she noticed irregularities, shady payments, inflated land declarations, emails hinting at facilitation fees. At first, Amara thought it was a mistake, but the deeper she looked, the clearer it became. These signs couldn't be ignored. When she tried to report them, her supervisor waved her off. Don't meddle, Amara. Just do your job. Remember who you are. Weeks later, she was fired. Reason: cultural misfit. A familiar excuse, a neat cover to push out a black employee who dared to challenge the system. Amara refused to accept defeat. Once she had seen the truth, she could never unsee it. So she made a bold plan. Returned to Stanton Tower in the humblest role, a janitor. Invisible, she could watch, listen, and gather information without raising suspicion. She chose the night shift, when offices were empty. Papers scattered on desks, trash bins overflowing with flawed contracts, emails not yet shredded. For 6 months, every night, she worked carefully, sorting scraps from the bins, copying them into her notebook, recording dates and times with precision. Sometimes she rescued crumpled invoices, flattening them in her thick book. Other times, passing a conference room, she pretended to clean the glass while memorizing every word of conversations meant only for insiders. Piece by piece, Amara pieced together the full picture: shady land contracts, massive bribes, money laundering networks, bid manipulation, fraud, embezzlement, all tied to Richard Stanton and his empire. Her spot in the garage was no accident. She had chosen it carefully, let the faint light spill on her books, scattered papers just so. She wanted to watch Richard's reaction, the most powerful man in the tower. If he showed decency, she might have negotiated before exposing everything. But she knew once her evidence went public, the fallout for his empire would be catastrophic. When Richard appeared smirking, his cruel words spilling out, Amara noted every detail: his tone, his gaze, the sheer contempt. He was living proof of his ruthless arrogance, a man who saw janitors as rats in the sewer. Everything she needed was now before her. A man like him deserved no concession. Amara didn't hold on to the evidence. She knew she couldn't take down the Stanton Empire alone. So she went to Daniel Brooks, a seasoned investigative journalist in his 40s. He was lean, almost hollow, but his eyes cut like glass. Daniel had brought down giants before, tearing open scandals that sent politicians and billionaires to court. In a quiet corner of the cafe, Amara slid a thick folder across the table. Daniel opened it. His eyes moved fast, skepticism fading into shock, then hardening into steel. Invoices, emails, contracts, handwritten notes. Every page stank of fraud. "You're sure?" Daniel's voice was low. "I've been on him for 6 months," she said, steady as stone. "Everything he's buried, I'm dragging it into the light." Daniel nodded, slow and heavy. "Amara, this could bring the Stanton Empire down. Do you understand what that means?" A faint smile touched her lips. "He told me once that I belonged in the gutter. From down there I saw everything. While Richard Stanton toasted with politicians, bragging about the janitor who learned math in a garage. He never knew. Every scrap of paper, every careless word, every signature ended up with the woman he mocked most, the powerless girl they all laughed at. She was the one who set the trap, and the proud tiger, Richard Stanton, was already stepping into it. In the first days of the month, the city's most respected newspaper dropped a bombshell. Splashed across the front page was a photo of Stanton Holdings' glittering towers and a headline that cut deep: "A financial empire gripped by corruption. Evidence never seen before." At first, readers hesitated. Skepticism lingered. But days later, the proof hit the press. Bloated land contracts, detailed bribe ledgers, secret emails plotting backroom deals. No more whispers, no more doubt. This was truth, bare and brutal. A city erupted. Newsrooms went into overdrive. TV anchors tore the story apart. Social media burned like gasoline. Partners who once fought for Stanton's handshake now vanished overnight. And the markets? They struck back hard. Stanton Holdings stock plunged, a freefall as merciless as a stone thrown off a cliff. The authorities couldn't stay silent. One morning, an elite task force stormed Stanton Holdings. They locked down offices, seized boxes of files, and froze every account tied to the empire. Outside, Richard's luxury cars still gleamed in perfect rows. Inside, the power he worshipped had vanished like smoke on the wind. Richard burned with fury. In his marble mansion, he hurled a crystal glass against the wall. Papers scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. His voice ripped through the room as he barked into his phone, demanding answers, hunting the traitor. How could a fortress he built brick by brick fall apart overnight? He grilled allies, summoned lawyers, threatened everyone who dared cross him. But later that night, rain slamming against the windows, hallway lights stretching into cold, crooked shadows, Richard faced the truth. The person who brought him down wasn't a rival, wasn't an enemy from the outside. It was the small, dark-skinned woman he once laughed at, the one he called nothing, Amara Johnson. He stepped into the underground garage. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, throwing broken shadows across the concrete. She was waiting. No janitor's uniform this time, just a white shirt, simple and clean. Her frame was slender, her face pale but unshaken. "You." His voice came out a growl, thick with rage and betrayal. "You dare betray me?" Amara didn't move. Her voice was calm, steady, yet it cut through the vast, empty space like a verdict. "You told me once my place was in the dark. From that darkness I saw everything you tried to hide." The words hit like a blade, slicing through his pride, twisting deep. And in that instant, Richard knew. He had given her everything: time, motive, opportunity. His own contempt had built the trap she now held shut around him. Amara's eyes never wavered. The beaten janitor was gone. What stood before him was something else entirely. A woman who held justice in her hands. And she wasn't letting go. The trial gripped the nation. The courtroom overflowed. Reporters jostling for space. Cameras flashing. Strangers craning for a glimpse of the fallen king. Richard Stanton sat in the defendant's chair. His tailored suit hung loose on his frame. His face was hollow, his hair streaked with gray. Before him, towers of files, rows of witnesses, and the mountain of evidence Amara had built piece by piece. The gavel cracked. The charges came like hammer blows. Corruption, money laundering, bid rigging, fraud. Each word was another chain tightening around him. Richard tried to fight. His voice rasped with desperation, but no one cared anymore. When the sentence fell, years behind bars, assets stripped, he didn't flinch. The man who once ruled an empire now sat empty, staring at nothing. The arrogance was gone. In its place, silence, from power to prison. His fall was faster than a blink. Amara's name swept through headlines, whispered in boardrooms, shouted across news channels. The woman who brought down an empire. But to her, it wasn't triumph. It was closure. The darkness had been dragged into the light. That was enough. After the trial, a top financial firm offered her a position as an analyst. No more bleach-stained floors, no flickering lights. Now, she sat in a bright office, screens glowing with numbers that told honest stories. Her paycheck brought more than comfort, it brought freedom. She moved into a sunlit apartment with wide windows and quiet mornings. For the first time in years, she didn't wonder where her next meal would come from. She could breathe. Her family felt the change too. Nieces and nephews with curious eyes now had a future she could help build. She saved for their schooling, because one truth burned inside her like a vow. Knowledge is a flame, and she would never let it die. Amara's story became a beacon. Newspapers, talk shows, even her old university hailed her as a symbol of justice and grit. Messages poured in from young people of color, voices long drowned out, telling her she had given them hope again. In an interview, when asked what kept her going, Amara smiled. Darkness doesn't swallow us whole, she said softly. Sometimes, it's where we find the strength to bring truth into the light. Those words spread like fire, etched into countless hearts. They summed up her journey. The woman once mocked in an underground garage had dragged a corrupt empire into the glare of justice. One night, Amara returned to that same garage. The lights still flickered. The smell of oil still clung to the air. She stood in the silence, remembering the scribbled notes, the nights spent crouched on cold concrete, teeth clenched against the chill. It all began here. In the very darkness Richard Stanton used to humiliate her. Now, from that darkness, Amara had carved a path of light, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. Message it. Amara Johnson's story proves this. Darkness isn't only fear. It's where strength is forged, where resolve takes shape. The janitor they mocked, the woman they dismissed, turned rock bottom into the springboard that shattered an empire built on lies. Justice doesn't rise from privilege. It comes from those who refuse to bend, who dare to drag the truth into the light. Sometimes the ones forced lowest see the most, and the ones who look down on them, their own arrogance becomes the grave they dig with their bare hands.